Everyone trusted him. Everyone welcomed him. No one knew the monster living beneath the mask. To his neighbors, he was the friendly contractor. To the community, he was the man who dressed as a clown to entertain children. But behind that painted smile, and beneath the floorboards of his own home, a nightmare was waiting to be uncovered. Everyone trusted him. Everyone welcomed him. But no one, absolutely no one, knew the monster living beneath the mask. He shook hands with parents, posed for photos with children, and smiled like a man with nothing to hide. Yet, under that smile lay a darkness so deep it would shake America forever. In the heart of suburban Illinois, behind the trimmed hedges, white picket fences, and friendly waves, lived a man who would become one of the most feared serial killers in American history. His name was John Wayne Gacy, and he wore a smile that fooled everyone. And beneath the floorboards of his home, a truth too horrifying to imagine. The 1970s in Norwood Park Township were peaceful, almost idyllic. Families gathered on front lawns, kids raced bikes down long sidewalks, and everyone seemed to know everyone else. In this world lived John Wayne Gacy, a man who fit perfectly into the suburban picture. He was the neighbor who lent you tools and insisted you keep them, the volunteer who organized parades and fundraisers, the businessman who employed local teens, teaching them skills, offering them money, and giving them a sense of purpose. Residents described him as helpful, friendly, a real community man. If a family needed help setting up a birthday party, he was the first to arrive with decorations. If a local charity needed volunteers, Gacy wore his clown costume, pogo, and performed for free. Children adored him. Parents trusted him. Politicians welcomed him. What no one saw was that Gacy cultivated trust with intention. He crafted a reputation so strong, so dependable, that no one would question him, even when they should. Behind that smile, behind every handshake, behind every act of community service, was a man hiding a darkness deeper than any suburban street had ever known. The disappearances began quietly. At first, they were dismissed as typical teenage runaways, boys arguing with parents, seeking independence, or drifting through the city's job market. But in hidden police reports filed across Cook County, similarities began forming. Young men between 14 and 21, some last seen near bus stations, others last seen accepting job offers. A few simply vanished while walking home from work. Patterns emerged, and many were described as responsible, not likely to run away. Several had one thing in common: they had worked for or spoken with John Wayne Gacy. Some were last seen entering his car. But the dots remained unconnected, scattered across different police districts. Meanwhile, Gacy continued hosting neighborhood parties, laughing with children while his crawl space hid a growing collection of horrors. For nearly 6 years, no one realized a predator lived among them, one who knew exactly how to blend in, how to manipulate trust, and how to exploit the gaps in the system. December 11, 1978. A night burned into Chicago history. 15-year-old Robert Piest was working a shift at the local pharmacy. He was known for being reliable, respectful, and dedicated. When Gacy arrived to give an estimate for renovation work, Robert overheard him mention a job opportunity. He told his mother, "I'll be right back. I'm just going to talk to that contractor about the job." He never returned. Robert's mother immediately reported him missing. She refused to accept any explanation other than the truth. Something was wrong. Detectives quickly traced the last person Robert spoke to, Gacy. When police knocked on his door, Gacy acted calm, polite, even welcoming. But detectives noticed small inconsistencies in his story. A strange smell in the house. Odd behavior. Conflicting statements. For the first time in years, Gacy sensed the walls closing in. Detectives placed Gacy under 24-hour surveillance. At first, he treated the officers like friends. He bought them breakfast. He joked with them. He tried to charm them the way he charmed everyone else. But the mask began cracking. He slept little. He drank heavily. He drove erratically, sometimes for hours, as if trying to outrun his own mind. He rambled. He made bizarre statements. He contradicted himself constantly. Meanwhile, investigators were gathering evidence. A witness testimony, missing persons, connections, receipts, employee statements, reports of strange behavior in his home. Every piece tightened the noose. Gacy knew it, and finally, one night, something inside him broke. He confessed parts of his secret to lawyers and friends, spinning a chaotic tale of alter egos, blame-shifting, and fragmented awareness. Police secured a full search warrant. The nightmare was about to be uncovered. The crawl space beneath Gacy's home was never meant to be entered by anyone other than him. It was low, narrow, suffocating. A place of darkness and secrets. On December 22, 1978, officers descended. The dirt was damp from winter moisture. The smell was overwhelming, a foul mix of decay, mold, and earth. A single flashlight beam revealed something unnatural. A shape, a form, then another. Investigators froze. And slowly, horrifyingly, the truth emerged. Over the next days they uncovered body after body, carefully buried, layered in tears, wrapped in the silent soil beneath Gacy's feet. In total, 29 victims lay beneath the house. 4 more were found in the Des Plaines River. Many were never identified during Gacy's lifetime. The excavation shook the nation. Reporters cried on camera. Communities gathered in shock and disbelief. Families who had waited years for answers received them, but not the ones they hoped for. Chicago had uncovered a monster living quietly in the suburbs. Gacy's trial began in February 1980. The courtroom overflowed with journalists and grieving families, each waiting to hear the details behind the mask. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence. Personal items belonging to victims, witness testimonies, employee accounts, psychological analyses. The crawl space itself, documented in chilling detail. Gacy claimed insanity. He blamed alternate personalities. He accused employees. He tried every tactic to shift responsibility. But testimony after testimony painted a clear picture. A manipulator, a predator, a man who exploited trust and hid behind a mask. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 2 hours. They returned with a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts. Gacy was sentenced to death. Families wept, not out of joy but exhaustion. Justice felt heavy, not victorious. Gacy spent 14 years on death row. He painted clowns. He granted interviews. He denied responsibility. He shifted stories endlessly. Some of his artwork sold for thousands of dollars, sparking controversy and outrage among victims' families. He enjoyed the attention. He enjoyed the spotlight. He enjoyed the chance to keep rewriting the narrative. But time kept moving. On May 10, 1994, Gacy was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center. Outside, hundreds gathered, some holding candles, others quietly standing in solemn reflection. His final words were cold and dismissive. A fitting end for a man who hid behind a smile and never once admitted the full truth. The discovery beneath John Wayne Gacy's home shocked not only the state of Illinois, but the entire world. Investigators worked day and night, carefully excavating the crawl space that had once been just a dark pocket of earth, now a silent witness to years of hidden horror. Each new revelation pushed the public further into disbelief. The friendly neighbor, the man who dressed as a clown for children, the community volunteer. How had he fooled everyone? Gacy, arrested and cornered, began to unravel. At first, he denied everything, confident he could outtalk investigators the same way he had manipulated nearly everyone around him for years. But this time the mask no longer held. Evidence was mounting faster than he could spin excuses. Under pressure, emotionally exhausted, and aware that his charm could no longer save him, Gacy began to confess, piecemeal at first, then in longer and deeper admissions. He spoke with a disturbing calmness, as if describing events that no longer felt connected to him. Detectives later said he acted like a man detached from his own reality, slipping between denial and admission like someone flipping pages in a book. As news spread, thousands stood in disbelief. Television stations ran continuous coverage. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Families of missing young men waited in painful silence as investigators tried to match identities to the remains found beneath Gacy's home. When Gacy's trial began in February 1980, the courtroom was packed. People came not just for answers but for understanding. How had such evil hidden in plain sight? How had a community been fooled for so long? During the trial, Gacy's defense argued insanity. They claimed he was unable to comprehend his actions. But the prosecution countered with decades of manipulation, patterns of deception, and the undeniable organization behind his crimes. They painted a portrait of a man fully aware of what he was doing, someone who used charm as a weapon, who hid behind a painted smile and a handshake. Witness after witness testified. Experts debated. Journalists scribbled furiously in notebooks. And through it all, Gacy sat still, flashing polite smiles to the crowd, as if the world still failed to grasp who he truly was. After weeks of testimony, the jury returned with a swift and unanimous decision. Guilty on all counts. Gacy was sentenced to death. The mask had finally fallen, but the echoes of what lay beneath it would linger for generations. After his conviction, John Wayne Gacy was transferred to death row at Menard Correctional Center. He spent 14 years there, appealing, painting, giving interviews, and insisting, against all logic, that he had been misunderstood, misrepresented, or wrongfully accused. Even in confinement, he clung to the mask he had worn for most of his life, the mask of control. But time ticked forward, unbothered by his denials. Outside prison walls, families mourned. Communities healed slowly. Investigators, many of them forever changed by the case, continued identifying the last of the unknown victims using emerging forensic technologies. Even decades later, some names remained unclaimed, echoing an invisible tragedy that stretched far beyond the walls of Gacy's home. As the years passed, Gacy's story became more than a crime. It became a painful reminder of how evil can hide behind normalcy. How a smiling neighbor, a community volunteer, a man who entertained children could conceal darkness behind charm and confidence. And how society, blinded by appearances, could miss what was in front of them. On May 10, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection. Reporters described his final moments as strangely emotionless. The man who had once controlled every narrative, every conversation, every room he entered, now had nothing left to say. His final statement was brief, unsettling, and devoid of remorse. It was a last attempt at control, an attempt that no longer mattered. The world had long since seen the truth behind the mask. After his execution, his belongings were auctioned off or destroyed. His infamous clown paintings were burned, shredded, or locked away. His house, once a place of unimaginable secrets, was demolished, flattened to the earth as the community tried to reclaim the space he had corrupted. But physical destruction could not erase the lasting impact. In the years that followed, criminologists, psychologists, and investigators studied Gacy to understand how such a dual life could exist. They analyzed his childhood, his manipulations, his charm, and his calculated facade. What they found was a chilling lesson. Evil does not always appear as a shadow. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes, it fits in so well that no one ever questions it. The story of John Wayne Gacy became a blueprint, an enduring warning for law enforcement, communities, and parents everywhere. The warning that monsters do not always hide in darkness. Sometimes they walk beside us. Sometimes they are welcomed. Sometimes they are celebrated. And sometimes, they wear a mask no one thinks to look behind. The house is gone. Gacy is gone. But the lesson remains, etched forever into American history. A reminder that trust, unchecked, can be dangerous, and that the face of evil is not always what we expect. The case of John Wayne Gacy reshaped America. The police improved missing person protocols. Agencies began cross-referencing cases more effectively. The background checks for youth employment tightened. The community awareness of predatory behavior increased. Gacy's story forced the nation to confront uncomfortable realities. Evil doesn't always lurk in shadows. Sometimes it stands beside you at a parade. Sometimes it makes you laugh. Sometimes it smiles while hiding unthinkable darkness. His legacy is not his crimes, but what we learned from them. And the message is clear. A mask can hide anything, even a monster.